He said it with that upward tilting corner of his mouth that wasn't a smile. It was ownership. Entitlement. That smug, nasal tone that always came with men who thought a promotion made them gods. "You'll delete all of it," he said, standing over her desk with a printout of the contract she signed 5 years ago. One fingernail tapping the clause as if she hadn't read it 1,000 times. "Everything you built while employed here belongs to the company. Side projects included. Clean your laptop out before you leave." She didn't say a word at first. She stared at the screen like she was processing, maybe even surrendering. Her heart was pounding so violently she could feel it in her teeth. But her face stayed still. Practiced still. Quiet rage looked a lot like obedience if you wore it right. Around them, the open office was too quiet. Someone clicked a mouse nervously. A half-coughed laugh stuttered in the corner from the designer, who still hadn't learned not to perform for power. "I assume you mean the side project I mentioned. The one with the algorithm that outperformed our main platform by 300%. She asked dryly, her voice flat as tile. "Or the back-end tools you rejected 6 times because you didn't get the value?" He folded his arms and leaned against the cubicle partition like he was doing her a favor. "It's not personal. It's just business. IP is IP. This is standard." She gave a small, brittle laugh. The kind that bounces off drywall and leaves a smell. "Right. Like standard decency. Or standard ethics." He didn't flinch. He was too drunk on authority, too new to the role, too used to being the golden boy. He assumed he was untouchable. And she, well, he assumed she was nothing. She slowly turned back to her screen, hands gliding over the keyboard like a pianist about to perform. She clicked into her directories, tools, models, dashboards, integrations. Years of work, innovation, finesse. Then she hit select all. He stood behind her like a teacher waiting for a misbehaving student to obey. "Deleting now," she said in a voice smooth as bleach. The files began to disappear, line by line. But her eyes didn't blink. She whispered something then. Soft. Barely audible. "What was that?" he asked, suspicious. She turned, finally meeting his gaze head-on. Her smile was thin as a razor. "I said I hope your backups work. Because I wasn't stupid enough to use your servers." His eyes narrowed. "That's a violation." "No," she said, voice calm and crisp. "It's called contingency planning. Look it up. Oh wait, you'd have to use my deleted documentation for that." A silence fell. For a moment, no one knew if this was theater or meltdown. No one moved. No one breathed. She stood up slowly, closed her laptop with reverent care, and reached for her bag. "You wanted compliance," she murmured. "You got it. Good luck explaining to the board how you just flushed our competitive edge, because your ego couldn't handle a woman knowing more than you." The smirk finally slipped. Just a flicker. But it was enough. As she walked out of the office, the heavy silence behind her felt like the pause between lightning and thunder. Inside, humiliation no longer burned. It crystallized into something colder. Something planned. He thought it was over. She knew it had just begun. The office lights above her buzzed softly, fluorescent and indifferent, casting a flat pallor over the death of a legacy. She sat back down, fingers poised like a surgeon's, calm, deliberate, lethal. Her boss had walked off thinking it was done. That she'd fall in line like a good little employee and wipe herself from the company's hard drives. He hadn't noticed the glint in her eyes, the way her lips didn't quite close around her smile. He hadn't stayed to supervise. Perfect. She exhaled through her nose and opened a command terminal, not the company GUI he expected. Not the drag-to-trash melodrama. This was precision. Code level. Untraceable. She didn't just delete, she dismantled. Line by line. Dependency by dependency. Obscure strings unlinked, root files severed, scripts ghosted. What remained would look intact until someone actually tried to use it. Like a car with no engine. Beautiful shell, dead heart. But before she began the purge, she secured what mattered. Her portable SSD, a small, matte black device tucked discreetly in the lining of her laptop bag, received the most critical pieces. Not everything. Just the crown jewels. Her adaptive learning model, her sandboxed infrastructure, and the data visualizer she built from scratch that made their boardroom charts look like kindergarten scribbles. She encrypted it with a phrase only she would understand. Green light never came. A private joke about the product that earned them their first investment round. The one she architected but wasn't invited to present. The same project her manager took full credit for during the quarterly earnings call. She had clapped. In the back row. Silently. Smiling like she hadn't been gutted. Another terminal window. She ran a script named complywithgrace.bat. Pure theater. Inside, it mimicked deletion logs while simultaneously corrupting pointers deep in the directory trees. Everything would look fine until the next update. Then chaos. She leaned back and watched as digital traces of her bled out onto the screen. Her expression didn't change, but her mind drifted, back through the years. The accidental omissions on team rosters. The times her ideas were labeled too ambitious, only to be repackaged by male coworkers 6 months later. The HR emails that were lost in the system. The awkward smiles during meetings when she corrected someone, and was met with silence. The worst part wasn't the disrespect. It was the expectation that she should feel grateful to even be in the room. You'll miss me when I'm gone, she thought. And she wasn't wrong. They thought they were burying her. But all they'd done was plant a minefield. When the purge was done, she deleted the logs. Even her own footprint vanished cleanly. No digital scent, no codebase ghost, nothing for their in-house forensic expert to find. Her laptop now held less soul than a demo unit. She unplugged the charger, zipped her bag, and stood with the same cold calm she had worn all week. The designer glanced over, then quickly away. The intern who used to shadow her stared at the floor, cheeks pink with shame. No one said a word. Let them stay loyal to the throne. They'd learn what it was like when the queen stopped defending the castle. She walked to the elevator without a backward glance. Not a single file. Not a single regret. But deep inside, behind that steel-layered composure, the bitterness had shifted. Hardened. Refined. She wasn't gone. She was just untraceable now. And ahead of them by exactly 6 months, he returned with a limp salad and a soda, still laughing at some half-funny joke he'd told himself in the elevator mirror. The smirk hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened. He looked around expecting applause from the shadows. Victory in every footstep. Ego swollen by imagined triumph. She wasn't at her desk. That pleased him. He thought she had slinked out in shame. Tail between her legs, maybe crying in the parking garage. Maybe already rage-texting a sister or a lawyer. Or some ex who still thought she had potential. But as he stepped into the open floor, the air changed. CFO Alan Morris was waiting for him. Bald, tight-lipped, dressed like someone who didn't believe in casual Fridays or mercy. And Alan didn't do floor visits. Ever. If he left the executive tier, it meant the sky was burning or the ground had given out. Which, as it turned out, it had. Brad, the CFO said, no preamble. We need to talk. Now. Brad's smirk faltered just a bit. What's the rush? Alan didn't answer in words. He held out a company phone with a call still active, speaker on. A voice came through, clipped and tight. Yes, this is First Meridian. We're confirming multiple flagged attempts to process back-end financial transactions from your primary accounts. It appears several authentication scripts have failed. We've frozen all contractor payments pending manual override. Additionally, your licensing platform is currently offline, and 3 vendors have just reported breach protocols. Brad blinked. What? That's not possible. Our licenses are automated. Alan cut him off. They were. She built that pipeline. No name needed. Every head nearby turned, but pretended not to. No one dared speak. Brad's face paled under the fluorescent light, a waxy sheen forming on his forehead. But she deleted everything. Alan's expression darkened. Exactly. She deleted it too cleanly. That wasn't an emotional meltdown. That was a surgical strike. From her spot near the kitchenette, coffee in hand, quiet as snowfall, she watched it unfold. Not gloating. Not interfering. Just observing. She stirred her coffee once, then twice, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. The CFO caught her gaze for a single flickering second. He said nothing, but the twitch in his eye said he understood now. Too late, of course. Brad, on the other hand, was unraveling by the second. You said it was a side project. You said it wasn't core. It became core, Alan snapped. That backend she built for fun? It ended up powering half our reporting infrastructure. You let her walk out with the only living documentation of our compliance matrix. People were standing now, pretending to stretch, pretending to check Slack messages, but everyone was listening. One woman mouthed "Oh my God" to another over the top of her monitor. Brad turned to look toward her empty desk and for the first time, realized that nothing was where it used to be. The energy, the stability, the quiet genius holding up his illusion of control. It was all gone. What remained was just static and silence. And panic. From the corner, she took another sip, the ceramic cup warm in her hands. They hadn't just fired her. They'd pulled the pin and handed her the grenade. And she hadn't even needed to throw it, just quietly walked out, leaving it ticking under their desks. The stakes weren't about ego anymore. This wasn't personal vendetta or bruised pride. This was the foundation of the company. Contracts, data streams, vendor trust, all fracturing in real time. No screams. No slam doors. Just a woman with a calm demeanor, a coffee cup, and the knowledge that the empire they built on her back was finally sinking under the weight of their own arrogance. And no one, not even the CFO, could stop it now. IT started with whispers, then pings, then full-blown Slack sirens, email flares, and hallway footsteps that turned from casual to frantic. The second floor smelled like panic sweat and toner ink. By mid-afternoon, the executive suite looked like a crime scene. The CIO was red-faced, gripping a phone with both hands as if sheer force could squeeze answers out of it. The CMO, who'd once snorted in a meeting that her data obsessions were inhibiting creative freedom, was now locked in a call with a furious brand partner, nodding like her head might snap off. In the middle of it all, Brad, boss of the hour, man of the moment, shrinking visibly by the minute. He was pacing in his office with the blinds wide open. Transparency theater, or maybe just a forgotten detail in his unraveling state. His jacket was off, tie loosened like he was auditioning for a workplace meltdown scene. Her files are gone, he barked into speakerphone. I told her to delete them. I ordered it. On the other end, legal. You told her to delete the systems she designed? Without backing them up. She was bitter. Rogue. Non-compliant. He shot back, voice rising. She blindsided us. The CTO leaned against the glass wall, arms folded, unimpressed. That rogue code is what kept our compliance logs passing audit. Remember last October, when we dodged a 6-figure fine? That was her patch. Brad snapped. She was replaceable. The silence that followed was deafening. The CFO stepped in then, deadpan. And yet here we are. 4 hours in, and not a single senior dev can reinitialize the pipeline. Clients can't access the platform. Payment integrations are frozen. Half the board is in a private thread wondering why we outsourced the company's brain to someone we now can't even get on the phone. At that exact moment, somewhere on the first floor, a conference call dropped. Again. For the 4th time. An intern screamed into a headset. I don't know why it's down, sir. We're working on it. The irony was surgical. Exquisite. And she wasn't even in the building anymore. She sat 3 blocks away, in the corner of a hole-in-the-wall ramen shop with the best miso broth in the city. Laptop open, but untouched. Phone face down. Chopsticks in hand, slicing noodles with absent-minded grace as the company she carried like deadweight for 5 years collapsed without her. She scrolled headlines with her free hand. Startup darling delays launch after system glitch. Vendor payments frozen across entire sector. Anonymous source claims she was the only one who understood the stack. She chuckled into her broth. It wasn't even bitter anymore, just absurd. She'd been told so many times she was overreacting, too detail-oriented, not a team player. She was called emotional for caring, called difficult for fixing what they broke. Now, the same men who called her replaceable were looking under desks for answers like toddlers hunting Easter eggs. Brad, in particular, was spinning like a glitching NPC. At one point, he tried to summon the junior engineer who had shadowed her. Poor kid looked like he'd seen a ghost. She didn't share access. Said I wasn't cleared. Why didn't you override? She told me if I ever tried, the system would auto-lock. Did it? Yeah. Of course it did. Brad's final Hail Mary? An all-hands email with her name in all caps, claiming she'd sabotaged systems and acted maliciously. He even quoted the IP clause in her contract. But legal replied first, firm and fast. You ordered deletion. That order voids chain of custody arguments. We're exposed. Fix the fallout instead of assigning blame. It wasn't just incompetence now, it was negligence. Executed in writing. She slurped the last of her broth, tossed the $20 on the table, and slipped on her coat. They thought they'd fired her. But what they really did was set the building on fire. And then ask her, too late, where the extinguisher was. By Friday morning, the executive floor was no longer a place for strategy, it was a battlefield of self-preservation. The glass-walled conference room, once a sanctum for quarterly bragging sessions and espresso-fueled brainstorming, had become an arena. Voices echoed through it like a cage match in pressed suits and pearl-white veneers. No more sycophantic applause. No more chuckling over KPI slides. Just finger-pointing, sweat, and the foul stench of fear. Don't look at me, the CTO snapped, jabbing a pen at the CIO. You told me the DevOps team was mirroring backups every Friday. Where's that data now? The CIO slammed his hand on the table. The automation relied on her scripts. You think I knew she was running the job manually after Jenkins broke last quarter? The CMO, who once called her a bit intense for branding conversations, threw up her hands, mascara smudged from hours of sleep-deprived panic. You all kept her siloed. We didn't even have documentation. You think I wanted a single point of failure on a marketing tool that costs us $30,000 a day when it's offline? Across the glass, Brad sat stiffly, eyes flicking between speakers like a condemned man waiting for his own name to surface. He looked older, less like a boss, more like a boy who got caught copying homework. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. She was territorial. She didn't share anything unless you asked exactly right. The CFO's eyes were twin razors. And you never thought to require documentation? Instead, you encouraged her to delete everything during her offboarding like we were cutting ties with a failed intern. Silence. Thick and acidic. Everyone knew what this was now. Blood in the water, and the sharks were circling. Nobody wanted the board to think this was their fault. So they shoved blame like hot coals, hoping to pass the burn to someone slower, someone already half on fire. And she wasn't watching from the sidelines anymore. She was listening. Because one of her old coworkers had started sending her screenshots, Slack threads, call transcripts, email forwards. Half the staff was leaking internal chaos to anyone who'd read it. Some of them were anonymous, but not all. Her allies, quiet, scattered, underestimated, were tired of watching her be erased and blamed. They were tired of pretending that the emperor wore anything at all. One DM just read. They said you were difficult. Turns out you were essential. Another. You were the only one who ever explained how things worked. Brad said your attitude was toxic. Now he's crying in the conference room. She read each message with a growing detachment, something cold and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It wasn't pride. Not exactly. It was something more corrosive. Victory maybe, but drained of its sweetness. She should have felt euphoric. Triumphant. Instead, she just felt done. She remembered the meetings. The performative laughter. The times she'd explained something, only to be cut off mid-sentence because Brad wanted to move things along. She remembered the tech review where the CTO asked her to dumb it down a bit, and then used her exact phrasing in his deck to the board later that week. All those years of being minimized, muted, and managed. Now the same people were flailing in the wreckage of their own arrogance, searching for a lifeline they'd already burned. And here she was holding the blueprint. No one had asked her to come back. Not yet. They were still too proud. But the collapse had only just begun. And she wondered, quietly, clinically, how far it would go before someone said the words they all feared most. We need her. The hollow space in her chest didn't throb with pain anymore. It echoed. It began with a single email. Subject line. Let's talk. From Brad. Of course. She didn't open it. Didn't need to. She could already hear the voice in her head, strained, artificially warm, peppered with just enough self-deprecation to fake humility. But by noon, the trickle turned into a flood. 22 emails, 7 LinkedIn connection requests, 2 recruiter DMs, a voicemail from someone in legal, free hey, just checking in, smiley face, Slack messages from people who hadn't spoken to her in months. They tried every tone: corporate casual, groveling, transactional, performative woke. One email subject line read, "Let's right this wrong together." Another, "What would it take to bring you back?" What it would take. A time machine. A spine. An ounce of respect back when it actually counted. She sat cross-legged on her couch, laptop propped on her knees, the messages growing in number like unpaid debts. Notifications blinked like needy children. The most desperate of them all was Brad's third message, timestamped 3:04 a.m. "You were right. I didn't understand how much you held together. The board wants you back. Name your price." Name her price. As if this were a poker game. As if her value could be recalculated now that they were bleeding out. As if dignity was retroactive. They dangled everything. A VP title. An equity package. A public apology, in a way that doesn't affect investor confidence. One even suggested putting her name on the next press release as lead architect. Like that would fix erasure. A thin smile curved across her lips. Not joy, more like irony curling into itself. She scrolled through the messages with idle detachment, like flipping through spam coupons. So many apologies crafted by committee, massaged by PR, hollowed out by fear. Not one said, "We saw you. We were wrong." Not one offered her power, only position. She closed her laptop. Let the messages pile up like trash on the curb. And in the deep, long pause of silence after, she felt it. Temptation. Real. Brief. Dangerous. There was a version of her, 2 years younger, still hopeful, still stretching herself thin to earn approval, that would have replied. Would have taken the offer. Would have rationalized the scraps as vindication. That version was dead. And her ghost was done explaining herself. She reached for her phone, hovered over the LinkedIn notifications, and then, smiling faintly, opened settings. Blocked. One by one. Email domains. LinkedIn contacts. Slack handles. She salted the digital earth behind her. The world went quiet. Her silence wasn't passive. It was a scalpel. A scream in reverse. She didn't rage. Didn't retaliate. She simply vanished, taking every ounce of value they never acknowledged until it was too late. They had fired her like she was nothing. Now they were learning what nothing actually felt like. And still, they couldn't figure out why everything stopped working the moment she walked out the door. Why Monday morning, the carnage had gone viral. Tech sites picked up the scent first, some anonymous tip from a source close to the infrastructure team. Within hours, headlines bloomed like a rash across screens. Startup darling implodes after firing key architect. Internal error or executive ego. Codebase collapse halts operations. Exclusive. Insider says she was the system. She read the articles without flinching. In truth, she felt nothing at all. Not rage. Not glee. Just a cold, leaden stillness in her gut. Like sitting in the middle of a burned house, watching the last ember crackle out. It wasn't just bad press. It was annihilation. Investors were withdrawing. Partners were demanding audits. Clients were ghosting. A half-dozen contracts were voided before noon, citing non-performance and security concerns. The company's stock, already fragile, tanked 38% in 2 days. Emergency meetings led to more emergency meetings. The board moved from damage control to threat assessment. By Wednesday, the CFO resigned to pursue other opportunities. Translation. Jumped ship before the rot swallowed him. Brad was still there. Still trying to steady the ship with his captain's hat half on fire. A leaked video made the rounds. Brad, wild-eyed on a video call, shouting over his own CTO in a failed attempt to shift blame. She was unstable. She sabotaged us. But the tech blog that published it ran his rant alongside receipts. Git logs, version histories, even Slack messages praising her innovations months earlier. The comments section roasted him alive. Imagine firing the person who built your spine. and then wondering why you can't walk. She was the blueprint. Brad was just coloring inside her lines. CEO stands for cannot explain operations. The internet had found its villain and its ghost hero. Meanwhile, she watched it unfold from a distance. A cafe in another city, window cracked, sunlight soft on her arms. Her phone buzzed with a dozen messages a minute, none of them from anyone who mattered. A former intern sent her a text. Your silence is the loudest thing happening right now. She didn't reply, but she stared at the screen for a long time, the words echoing in her bones. It should have felt like triumph. The kind of righteous, storybook ending they don't give women in tech. The moment where the overlooked genius returns, carried on the shoulders of a stunned industry. But instead, it felt like standing on the ruins of a temple she spent years building with bare hands. They finally knew her name, only because she burned herself out of the frame. She closed her laptop gently, folded her hands in her lap, and whispered to no one, I told you I wasn't replaceable. The reckoning wasn't over. But the reckoning was theirs now. And she had no interest in helping them survive it that he found her on accident. Or maybe not. Maybe someone from the old office leaked her location, trying to curry favor with a sinking ship. Maybe Brad had just been spiraling for so long that desperation birthed clairvoyance. Either way, he showed up, sweating, frantic, still wearing that corporate armor. Expensive shoes scuffed from running, a blazer too formal for the summer heat, and the same hollow confidence that had once passed for leadership. She was exiting a co-working space, headphones in, sipping a smoothie, moving through her day like someone who had no ghosts left to dodge, until he stepped into her path. We need to talk. She didn't flinch, didn't even take out her headphones, just stared at him, unimpressed. He grabbed at the moment with both hands. Do you understand what you've done? The board's threatening legal action. Clients are gone. Vendors don't trust us. You think this is a win? This isn't revenge, it's professional suicide. She took out one earbud slowly. I'm not the one dying, Brad. His face twisted, half pleading, half furious. You think this makes you the hero? You've ruined people's jobs, careers. There are interns cleaning up your mess. My mess? She asked softly, dangerously. You didn't give us a chance to fix things. You just walked out, took everything with you. She let out a short laugh, dry as sandpaper. Fix things? You threw me out with a smirk and a clause. Delete your work, it belongs to us. That was the deal, wasn't it? His voice cracked. We can fix this. Come back. We'll make you CTO. Retroactive credit. Bonuses. Hell, I'll put out a statement apologizing if that's what you want. She tilted her head. The breeze moved through her hair, but she was still as stone. You don't want me back, she said. You want a bandage you can parade past investors. You want a name you once erased now written in bold across your sinking deck. I'm offering you power, he spat. Real power. No, she said. You're offering me the same table I was once forced to clean. Only now the legs are on fire. Brad stepped closer, rage rising. You're insane. Vindictive. Do you even care what you've done? She blinked, slow and cold. Then, with the quiet steel of someone who no longer needed to yell to be heard, she said it. You said everything I made belonged to you. Guess you were right. You own the ashes too. It landed like a bullet. His face fell. All that ego, all that smugness. The scaffolding cracked and slid away, leaving a man no longer angry, just empty. He opened his mouth again, but she was already turning. No reich. No Teatrix. Just the precise power of leaving when the other person is still scrambling for control. She walked away, slow, unbothered, her stride unshakable. The sun hit her shoulders. Her smoothie was still cold in her hand. Behind her, Brad didn't follow. He couldn't. He had nothing left to threaten. Nothing left to offer. And she, finally, had nothing left to prove. She didn't watch the news anymore. She didn't need to. The fallout had long passed the need for commentary. It was ambient now, like smoke in the walls of a building long after the fire's been put out. Even from miles away, she could smell it in the air, desperation, denial, and the decaying perfume of power undone. The last message came in at 7:12 a.m. It was from a junior partner. Someone who had once smiled too widely in meetings and pretended not to hear when she was talked over. Please. They've gutted the team. They say Brad's stepping down. We're hemorrhaging clients. Legal's whispering about acquisition. You don't have to answer. Just, please know it wasn't all of us. She stared at the screen for a long time. No anger. No guilt. Just that familiar chill of clarity. She took a slow sip of her coffee. Black. Strong. Unapologetic. The morning sun pooled over the windowsill, casting a clean square of light across her small kitchen table. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere in the distance. Far enough away to be irrelevant, close enough to feel poetic. She opened the message, pressed block, and then finally, mercifully, closed the last door they had into her world. The laptop stayed shut. The inbox unread. LinkedIn wiped clean. Phone on Do Not Disturb. There would be no tell-all interview. No revenge tweet. No dramatic press statement. She'd left them with no villain to fight, no target to sue, no olive branch to beg for. Just silence. And it echoed louder than any war could. For years, they'd confused her compliance for consent, her brilliance for background noise, her anger for attitude. They'd siphoned her knowledge like fuel and called it collaboration. They'd dressed their dismissal in policy and wrapped their cowardice in HR protocol. Now they were left with exactly what they built. A hollow company. A crashed system. A legacy with a missing spine. And no amount of backpedaling, bonuses, or rebranding could code her back into the machine. She looked out the window. A breeze moved the curtains gently. The world spun on, uncaring. She smiled. Turns out I didn't need to destroy them, she thought. All I had to do was leave. No forgiveness. No return. No regret. The silence she left behind would be louder than their quarterly losses, louder than their PR spin, louder than any forced apology could ever scream. And somewhere, deep in the wreckage they still refused to sweep up, her absence would hang in every failed login, every lost contract, every panicked boardroom whisper. She was right. She warned us. We didn't listen. And now they owned the ashes.